In this video, you are going to see the horror of the death process. The photos and soundtrack are disturbing. If you are upset by such content, do not proceed. This video provides footage from one man's death. The idea of dying is upsetting to us all. That our body will one day die is a reality we all face. How we will die, we do not know. Some deaths can kill within seconds and minutes and are painless, while the later stages of disease can take months for the body to finally die, and in the process, the individual goes through unbearable suffering. The process of death from disease is horrific, and the suffering that it inflicts on the inflicted is unimaginable. In the later stages of disease, when organs malfunction, its effects on the body are torturous. For not only does the body die, but it is capable of dying in the most horrific, gruesome way possible. The afflicted not only suffers, but at the end of their life becomes a prisoner in their own body, a body that becomes too weak to stand, lift their arms or legs, and even too weak to talk or even utter a word. The person in this video is an 85-year-old man, and he is dying of congestive heart failure and non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. He is pictured here several years earlier when he was healthy. This man never drank any alcohol during his life, but he was a big man of about 6'3", extra large bones, and he weighed over 300 pounds. They attributed his fatty liver to old age and being a larger male. In December, 11 months before he died, he underwent open heart surgery, while a year earlier he had been given a good bill of health. He had a quick recovery from the surgery. Unbeknownst to his doctors, while his arteries were cleared, his heart had weakened and he would shortly begin the death process and die 11 months later. In January, he starts to experience some edema in his feet. It progresses to his not being able to wear shoes because of the swelling, and from there his stomach bloats and swells with edema, and he is feeling discomfort. He begins to feel more fatigued and has frequent dizzy spells, and he begins the process of going to doctors and getting hospital tests. It will take 10 more months for the disease to destroy his body and take him to his death. And you can see the enormous belly, which is the edema, and he is put on water pills. He had recently spent time in a hospital. He has considerable swelling in his feet and legs as well. He is feeling discomfort from the excess water. He also feels cold all of the time, even in the dead of heat. By the end of June, he is not able to even concentrate on his laptop for very long, and he comments that he will not survive until Christmas and begins to arrange his affairs for death. In July, he is also sleeping more and growing weaker. It is difficult for him to walk any real distance because of the fatigue. He continues to go to doctors and take medicine and holds out hope he can be cured, but his heart is weak and his liver is not functioning to full capacity. He progressively begins to sleep even more, and the water in his body becomes a major issue. He is taking all of the meds he can take and following the diet. He goes to the hospital to be drained to give himself some relief. 2 months later, in September, he is sleeping even more, nods off regularly, has lost some of his appetite, and is growing weaker, and still is undergoing tests for his liver and kidneys. In October, he is hospitalized and sent to a rehab and is exercised by personnel, and he is in a wheelchair. The hospital informs him that with his condition, to get relief, he can make regular monthly visits to the hospital to have his stomach drained of fluid. He is drained one more time and decides this will be his last. He has had no quality of life for months, and between his recent hospital visit and the hospital rehab, he was hospitalized a month. He now begins to lose his voice due to a sore throat caused by the congestive heart failure, and the pain gets worse and worse and limits his ability to talk to the point that he can no longer talk on the phone except on occasion. On November 2nd, the rehab released him to go home to hospice care because there was nothing more that the doctors could do for his condition. His appetite has significantly decreased. He is sleeping quite a bit and must walk with a walker, but can barely do so and only does so to go to the bathroom. He is in a hospital bed and does not have the strength to lift his legs onto the bed. His throat is too sore to talk at any length. Day by day, he is losing more ability, as if life itself is being whittled away from his body, and he remarked that he was getting weaker by the day and stated, "I feel as if I am losing my life." The edema is excessive in his stomach and his feet. He uses a urinal as he is unable to walk himself to the bathroom, and when he does, it takes a great deal of effort. He can sit up for a time and then lays back down, and as the days progress, he sits up less and less and exhibits an apparent death mask. As he nears death, the edema wreaks havoc on his body. He develops a massive hardened area above his chest that both causes pain and affects his ability to breathe. One leg becomes larger than the other. His urine also takes on an unusual odor, and it almost does not smell like urine. He develops delirium, and it begins with irritability. He asks his caregiver to get a ruler to measure his bed to the floor and asked for the measurement. He begins to see things that are not there. He pointed to the ceiling and said that there was a white light and 4 men with instruments. He makes motions with his hands and stuffs something into a small box. He hands a caregiver something as if he were actually holding an object in his hand and there was nothing in his hand. Oddly, he motioned something from his mouth to the caregiver, and as the caregiver asked what was being handed, there was nothing in his hand. He said, "A cigarette." The man had quit smoking 40 years earlier. His appetite, which had significantly diminished when he was released from hospice, dwindled to his taking only small bites of his meal. From his state of delirium, he goes into full-blown terminal restlessness. Each night he clung to the left bed rail and pulled himself up and down all night long. He would wake half off the bed with his feet on the floor as if he were half sitting. The sound of the bed thrashing would go on all through the night. He is getting thinner and thinner and looking more like a skeleton, and the excess water building in his body becomes apparent but gives the appearance he is at a heavier weight. He becomes skin, bone, and excess disproportionate water. November 16th, 5 days before his death, he completely stops eating. November 17th, 4 days before his death, he is visited by family members and asks for chocolate milk and is only able to take a small sip. He knows when he is visited and is happy for the company. He is mostly in bed now and can no longer even stand to use a urinal. He needs a diaper. November 18th, 3 days before his death, he said hi to a visitor, but he now has water pooling in his face, and his face is swollen. His sister phones him, but he barely responds. When a caregiver took his sock off, he grimaced in pain. Also, when the bottom of his feet were touched. His feet, which were swollen with water, have now deflated and are all shriveled as if waterlogged. His feet almost take on a monstrous appearance. He is now too weak to cough up the phlegm in his throat, but he still slightly responds. He is in lots of distress and pain. In his sleep, he grimaces in pain. When the nurse helped bathe him, he motioned in pain with each move. Purple dots like measles appeared all over his bony chest. He no longer has a bowel movement, and his diaper smells so strong and foul that removing it fills the room with its odor. Along with the foul-smelling urine, his mouth secretions also take on a foul odor. Inside of his mouth appears black, and he is oozing some sort of foul-smelling mucus. He cried out in pain as he was moved off his diaper, and he is very weak. He has some rattling, breathing, and makes grunting sounds from time to time. His face swelled by night. He has stopped drinking any water. November 19th, 2 days before death, he is near coma, but not in one. He opened his eyes. He has edema on the right side of his face, and it is pooling. He coughs, but is too weak to finish his coughing. He grimaced in pain while still and quiet and was given more morphine. He is breathing with a slight rattle and is too weak to cough up his phlegm. He looks up briefly and still tries to cough, but can't. His eyes open, and he breathes quieter but rattly. The caregivers won't even turn his head at this point because he is in so much pain. At 10:09 in the morning, he tried to talk and moved his hands and arms a bit. His face was propped up and his eyes opened, and he closed them. By 10:15 in the morning, the water pooling in his face is in a ball and looks like the size of a golf ball. His head is propped up so it will go down. His nose is all swollen, and he started touching it, so it must have bothered him. He rattled when he breathed. He responded when his son came to visit and turned to see him, and his eyes opened, but he still was breathing rattly. He moved his hand to his head and tried to talk when spoken to. He was able to make sounds when asked how he was doing, and you could barely make out the words, "not good." At 2:24, when the caregivers moved him to change him, he looked like a skeleton, and he cried out in such pain they stopped. The cry was from his soul, and with no strength to even speak, he was still able to cry in pain. Hospice upped the morphine, and he was able to mouth that he wanted water. The morphine made him move his arms to try to itch his nose. The caregivers itched him. He has rattled on and off for 24 hours. Sometime afterwards, he lapsed into a coma, and there was no more movement or mouthing of sounds. At about 8:35, he began to breathe a horrifically loud death rattle that sounded like he was drowning underwater, and it also resembled the sound of water boiling on a stove. During this rattle, water was spraying out of his mouth. This went on for over 15 minutes, and hospice was phoned, and they said to give him atropine drops in his mouth and to give the drops every 3 hours. Afterwards, a very thick foam poured out of his mouth. While he breathed more normal, it was still rattly. The thick, yellowish, slimy foam was from the pulmonary edema, and it came out thick. November 20th, the day before his death, he has now gone 3 days without water. He did not respond when called, and at 8:30 a.m., more thick foam came out of his mouth. He uttered slight moans, heavy gurgling. The heavy foam stopped coming out of his mouth and dissipated into more of a clear liquid. At night, he let out a single gurgle around 8 p.m. and was quiet. November 21st. In the morning, about 8 a.m., the caregiver noticed blood droplets coming out with more foamy liquid. Hospice came and arrived at a couple of minutes after 9. The hospice nurse raised the bed to get him sitting up. The second that was done, a family member noticed that he had stopped breathing. The family started to gather, and the nurse heard a heartbeat and stated he was still alive. Seconds later, he stopped breathing, and the nurse checked his heart again and stated that there was no heartbeat, and she clocked his death at 9:07 a.m. His cause of death was due to congestive heart failure and non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. It had taken about a year for the disease to run its course, and in the end, the man was in excruciating pain. He was skin and bone and water from the edema in all the wrong places. His body, ravaged by the disease, had also gone 4 days without water and longer without food. It was surprising how long he hung on in the diseased state he was in before he died. The disease deformed his body, caused the most vile odors, untold pain and suffering, and yet it was as if this man's body did not want to die. 3 days after stopping all fluid, he was still alive when the signs of disease were all over his body. He still kept breathing, and he survived a day and a half after the horrific death rattle. What was evident was the horror of disease, but also of the strength of the body for this disease to run its full course, for the body to die. In all of the horror of this man's last days, A most surprising event occurred after his death. He developed a most peaceful, serene look, and his mouth, which was opened, closed into somewhat of a smile, and all traces of the disease were removed from his face that appeared only hours earlier. This man was a born-again Christian who trusted Jesus Christ as his personal Savior. The chaplain was a born-again Christian and noted that she was convinced that this man knew Jesus Christ and was born again based on the look that she saw on his face when she entered the room. It was a look as if there were no worries, as if all worries had been erased. He looked more peaceful in death than he had ever looked in life. The Bible states in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life." 1 Corinthians 15:55-57 states, "O death, where is your sting? O Hades, where is your victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is in the law. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." Death had no victory over this man. This was evident by the look in his face after he died. When God made man, there was no disease or death until man was deceived by the devil and ate the forbidden fruit, a fruit that had the power to change man's DNA and corrupt the body, so man now had a sinful nature and a body that would die both a spiritual and a physical death. But God, through Jesus Christ, provides a new birth, a spiritual one that is achieved by trusting Jesus Christ and his finished work on the cross. In Jesus Christ, we can have the assurance of conquering this physical death by being alive with Christ when we depart from our physical bodies, and we can rejoice and repeat Paul the Apostle's words, "O death, where is your sting? O Hades, where is your victory?" just as this man in this video.